Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6 Episode 6 Encounter Part 2. And from what we've seen, this episode covers chapters 273, pages 12 through 19, chapters 274, chapters 275, and chapter 276, pages 4 through 13. And when it comes to this episode, there is a lot that we need to break down, and let's dive right into the breakdown more proper. For starters, the first minute or so of this episode is pretty much just recap from what we saw with the last episode, with potentially some more additions of seeing the police officers in their local base doing whatever they need to do, and seeing that communications have been down in the area where Endeavor and Shigaraki are. And before we even get to that moment, we actually cut back to see Fat Gum moments prior as he is talking with Tokoyami, sees what's happening with him, and advises him to go somewhere specific for he sees that Hawks is injured. So it's cool that we get to see this moment because this is not necessarily something that we really got in the manga proper. And adding on to new scenes that we saw in the anime and not in the manga, we get scenes of both Yoroi, Mushira, and Kamui Woods performing actions and fighting villains, as well as we got an expanded fight scene of Getten versus Cementos, as well as we get more of Mount Lady fighting that we really did not get in the manga, with an additional scene of Cementos making a club for Mount Lady as she is smashing the ice around her to get to Getten. And this ties into a lot of things that I'm enjoying about the season when it comes to these small minor additions that really add to the story that wasn't in the manga. And speaking of things in the manga, we do get to see the Dabi as well as Compress interaction over what's happening with Toga, as well as we get Toga's most iconic scene in this part of the story, where we get a really good scene of Toga dressed up as the dude that had snakes coming out of his hands, as we see her instantly kill one guy and cut through the rest of the heroes, as we get to see her iconic pose of her as well as her entire quirk deactivating, as well as we get to see Gigantomachia's hand coming out of the ground behind Toga in a very well animated scene and one of her most iconic moments in this entire war. So it's cool that we get to see that, and a minor thing that I want to bring up is that the scene that I brought up in the last episode involving Gang Orca was cut, but the scene of Gang Orca actually taking out that individual is still kept in this episode. And something else that I want to bring up with the Toga scene is the fact that we get to see the images of her cutting through the enemies, but they actually keep the sound effects in that panel that I really enjoyed that they did. But cutting from the scene at Gunga Mountain Villa, we actually cut back over to Shigaraki versus Endeavor. And this entire animated scene and section of the episode is done extremely well. I love how the action flows so well. I love how they actually add some more stuff to Shigaraki when it comes to how he's processing the fact that he has All For One inside of him. But I just also like the smaller touches that they added, such as a new scene where we get to see Shigaraki's arm regenerate, which isn't in the manga. And I also love how they're able to sort of, in a way, censor Shigaraki's regeneration on his face to make it sort of kind of a little bit less grotesque, by having smoke fill the screen and fill his face up until the moment that his face is fully regenerated. So there's a lot of cool animation additions to this part of the scene, as well as some clarifications on some scenes from the manga. For instance, the scene that we see of Endeavor aiming and attacking Shigaraki, we see that he's actually using a similar quirk that we're going to get later on, most likely in the series, used by All For One, and how he's blocking Endeavor with this shield, which is not something that we explicitly get in the manga, or at least it's not explained as such. But we see that he's able to create this shield, and then later on we see that he's able to send Endeavor back using the shield, which is not necessarily in the manga. As well as we get the explanation of how Shigaraki is able to locate Deku via most likely the search quirk that was held by Ragdoll. But the anime adds this rainbow visual effect to Ragdoll's quirk, something that we necessarily never really saw with her, and is not really in the manga in this way. So this is once again a cool addition that the anime makes to really emphasize the abilities of the quirk users in the world of My Hero Academia. But as we also get the animated scene of Shigaraki trying to find and get closer to Deku as well as One for All, we get some added flourishes to the anime that we technically got in the manga that are expanded upon in the anime. Because we linger on the fact that Deku knows that Shigaraki is coming after him as we get smaller and newer scenes of Deku reacting to the people around him and coming to a realization that he needs to leave the area to protect the civilians, and also so that the heroes won't spend all of their man and resources on trying to protect and save him. And these new scenes that we technically got in the manga but are expanded upon in the anime includes the death of Funkman. And even though we really don't know who Funkman was prior to this moment, we really get to see the connection that another character has with them, and by seeing them dying, it adds to the fact that people are dying in this war and that they need to find a way to prevent that because they are heroes, and that at this moment they may not have the time to actually mourn the characters' deaths. As well as we just get this one small moment with Son Goku. You know, Son Goku, the Monkey King. Yes, he is in My Hero Academia, of course he is. But I also want to point out this one addition that is new to the anime, where we just see a single tear rolling down Deku's cheek. And this is just a very emotional and poignant moment, which eventually leads to Deku as well as Bakugo leaving the area to protect the civilians and the other heroes. And when they leave, we get once again a fantastic shot of just Deku and Bakugo flying and swinging through the area, seeing Deku use Black Whip to propel himself forward as Bakugo uses his explosions to keep up is a very much well animated scene, especially when you realize that a fair amount of CGI is used for those more panning and rotation shots. And I also would like to point out the cool interactions and dialogue that Deku has with Endeavor to really show that even though he is still kind of a kid, Endeavor still has some kind of respect and care for him due to the fact that he worked under him. So I really like that interaction, and I think the anime does that interaction well in comparison to the manga. Also, I just really like the scene of Deku reacting to the fact that Kacchan, aka Bakugo, is right next to him, and it's just as funny in the anime as it was in the manga. And speaking of Bakugo, I like to say that the anime did a really good job of incorporating Bakugo's development and growth in the manga of this scene in the anime. And how we see that he's trying to keep up with Deku, and we see that both in the anime and the manga, he does keep up with Deku even though Deku is going 30%. And I just really thought that this may have been a scene that they would have cut from the anime, but I'm glad that they kept it in. But now we're probably getting to one of the more iconic moments of this episode as well as in the manga. Because as we see that Shigaraki realizes that Endeavor will not stop following him, he does a combination of two quirks which pretty much forms a EMP that destroys the communication devices within Endeavor's team and within the local area. But there's also an added scene where we pan underground to see the test tubes that would contain Nomu beginning to activate and glow, which will be built upon what we get at the end of this episode. But as Shigaraki did that moment, we get the iconic moment of the imagery of Shigaraki appearing before Deku and Bakugo, as we get to see the imagery of Deku and Bakugo appearing to crumble to dust as Shigaraki is preparing to take and or kill One for All from Deku. But luckily enough, Gran Torino comes in with a save, as we also get a lot of added scenes of Ryuku as well as Endeavor going up against Shigaraki that is not necessarily in the manga. As we see Ryukugu using her wings to fly Shigaraki farther before it's revealed that Shigaraki's quirks have been nullified and erased by Eraserhead, who appears on the scene. And as we got that scene with Aizawa, there is once again an added scene after Shigaraki calls Aizawa cool, where we see that he is able to communicate a specific order, as we see that the Nomu underground begin to glow even more, which once again indicates potentially what's going to be happening at the end of this episode. And I just really love these scenes that are added because it kind of foreshadows information that may have been a bigger surprise in the manga, but is now more foreshadowed in the anime. Also, I would like to bring up this minor character of Kido. His quirk is explained to pretty much be able to change the trajectory of items, which allows for Endeavor to be sent up in the air. He doesn't really play that big of a role, I just really wanted to bring him up. But as I said, we once again get a lot more added action scenes of Ryuku and Endeavor fighting against Shigaraki, as we also have Gran Torino giving a speech to both Deku and Bakugo for why they need to pretty much stay behind and allow for the other heroes to take the lead. We pretty much get the reveal that what Shigaraki did was awaken some new Nomu that are there to fight against the heroes, as we get the shocked expressions of both Gran Torino, Bakugo, and Deku as they were in the manga, and it's just as hilarious as the episode ends on the scene of the Nomu coming awake. So, this was my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 6. What did you think of the episode? Was there anything in the episode that I missed that you noticed? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, leave a like on the video if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!